Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this episode we're going to continue to work on the MGA, and we're going to fit the fenders before they get painted. And it may sound a bit strange that we're going to trial fit the fenders first. And the reason we're going to trial fit the fenders before we paint them is because the holes are not fully 100% lined up, and we have some other issues that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. So I like to spray the fenders in the spray booth with all the holes perfectly aligned, so I can just bolt them down to the car whenever they are painted without having to re-drill or adjust holes, because that's the last thing you really want to do. In the previous episode we have straightened up the body, and the front had a very nasty dent, so we still have to weld up all these little holes now. And then we're going to put some polyester on top of that to make it smooth. And we also created a new valance in the previous episode, so if you want to see that, just check on my channel and you'll see on how we created the valance and how we have been pulling out all these dents, because it was fairly badly damaged. On an MGA, the fenders, and it doesn't matter if they are polyester or steel, are fitted with some piping in between the body and the fender. And this is why you cannot paint the fenders when they're on the car. You have to take them off the vehicle and then paint them and then put them back. And that's why trial fitting is so important, that you have all the holes right. I've seen people trying to paint fenders when they're on the car, but then you need to mask off this whole piping and it really looks bad. I don't recommend this at all. Now, to bolt down the fenders, I'm using standard bolts, the same bolts that you would use on your steel fender, but I'm having additional aluminum washers, and they are fairly thick and big because the holes in the polyester are a bit bigger and they've been used before, those fenders, so you want to have a sufficient coverage of polyester underneath this aluminum washer, basically, so you can hold down as best as possible that fender. And inside the fender we also have a splash protection, and that's this aluminum panel right here. That's the one that came off the car, and it's pretty greasy and dirty. But this actually goes inside, and it needs to be bolted down so that you don't have too much splash going inside to the fender. These will have to be reshaped a bit and corrected, but overall they are not in a bad condition, so they can go back on. And also in the back we'll have a bit of welding to be done. Not only do we need to fill up the little pull holes that we created, but also the opening for the filter neck for the gas tank has to be welded up now, because I'm going to have a fuel cell inside the back of the car, so that needs to be closed up. And then over here we have some cracks in the metal that we need to weld up. So there's a bit of welding that needs to happen on this car, not a hell of a lot, but we still have to do it. And then of course we'll have to put it up with polyester. And equally for the back fender we'll have to make some little adjustments, making sure the holes fit right. And that's about it, besides one more thing we need to do on the side of the car. I'm going to show you that now in a minute, what we need to do there. The right hand side door had a very deep dent on it, and I already pulled out most of it, but this is an aluminum panel and that makes it very hard. But we still need to correct it here and there before we put the polyester up. And you will see me using some nice and interesting tools, which is an inflatable bag to do so. So this is the inside of the door, and you know, wherever we have the dent and you can feel it, I can use an inflatable bag like this, which is very handy. But I want to make sure I don't make any punctures in it, and you might want to put some reinforcement up here and there with some wood pieces or plywood, it doesn't really matter. And now I can just inflate this, and it's going to start pushing out that dent pretty good. You will be surprised how powerful that is. This 1959 MGA has spent the last 10 years on the racetrack, and it received quite a bit of beating during that time. And when I said that the car was really beaten up, I really meant it. Look on this shape here. You know, this is certainly not symmetrical, isn't it? Now, when I looked up the history of this car, I noticed that this car was involved in a couple of crashes where this side was really bent. So that was corrected at the time. But you can see that the entire shape is no longer how it should be. Okay, this one looks more correct now. This is the one we corrected, but this one is quite different. And I don't really worry too much about it because at the end it's a race car and the grille that goes in front is covering all that up. But if this was a concours car or a road car, you want to have it in pristine condition. You would have to correct all this, and that's quite a bit of work. You can get a new top part, but this is going to run you like 2,000 euros, which is a lot of money. So for a race car, not worthwhile the money. I've noticed it on the gaps between the different panels that they are not always equal, especially on the left-hand side, and I think it's been pushed a bit to the left, this whole body. Not the frame is very much intact, but of course it's been hit a couple of times, the body, and then the whole body moved a little bit to the left, and the result of that is, of course, that the fenders don't have the right gaps anymore. Now, I can't straighten that up, that is just impossible, but I can correct the fender because this is a polyester fender, so we'll make the necessary adjustments. So let me show you what the problem is with the fender and the gaps between the door and the fender. Right, so this is the left-hand side of the MGA, and this is the polyester fender, and here we have the door. Now you can see we have a proper gap here, but the gap is getting narrow, 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 and then at the top they touch each other. So this is a bit of an issue. So, and I have no other means of correcting this really. If I lift it up, then it's going to come too high up. There is always something with this. So I might actually have to grind off a piece here along this blue line, this tape that I put up, because this is only polyester, and that way I will have a proper gap again, and then we'll fix this edge in polyester. That's not a big deal. So this is the kind of stuff I may have to do, because there is no way I can actually push the whole body back in the direction it should be. Maybe it's just the polyester fender itself that is not having the right shape. Okay, I fully understand that there are enthusiasts that feel that these old classic cars don't belong on the racetrack. They should be preserved and in pristine conditions. But to be honest, the MGA is born on the racetrack. They were very famous racers at the time. So I think there's space for both, the classic race car and the pristine showroom condition classic car. And I think we should both embrace those lovely British-made MGs. I'm going to take the wheels off for easy access. I'll start by clamping on the bottom part of the fender to the frame. I'm going to use these clamps, and I'm also going to use a metal bar so I don't really damage the polyester. I've used these little mini clamps on the bottom and a metal bar to hold the fender against the bodywork here, and we'll drill the holes later, but right now that is pretty much in place. Now I can work more on the top part. We're looking at the inside of the fender now through the opening of the headlight, and this is our first hole, and that seems to be matching up, so I'm going to lock that up, but then we have more areas. And the fender on the top is quite flush, so that's good. This one right here has no mating part on the main body, so I don't worry about this one. That one, we do have a matching locking nut on the back, but it's not in the right place, so I will have to drill a hole from the other side. So I'm going to use a Dremel to get to the back, because access is not always that easy. So the hole is right here, so it's not there, it's not there, it's right here. So now I need to enlarge it and we should be good. I'm using the Dremel in this area because I can't use my drill because it's too shallow. All right. All right. So now I want to make sure that the height is okay. And I think that's not too bad. So I think this is just fitting. So now that the fender on the top is good, I can correct the holes here equally with the Dremel, because that's a handy little tool to do so. But we are quite all right in most of the holes right here. There is not a lot that I need to take off, which is really good. Further down, I need to see. All right, so let's start with these, and I'm just going to do it the same way as you've seen me doing it in the beginning. And I can see that this one actually has to go down a bit only. So let's do that one. Yes. And while I'm tightening it, I'm also checking the top with my other hand to make sure that everything is still in the proper place. So this is my method on how I make sure that the fender is in the right place and aligned. So now I need to continue all the way to the end with the remaining bolts. And then I will come back to you when I'm doing the bottom part, because there I'm going to use some special inserts to create nuts, blind nuts as we call them. And then we're going to do the remaining fenders, especially the one on the left-hand side where I have to grind off a piece. So I have removed all the bolts after the fender was lined up. So now I can take it back off. To bolt the fender down, I'm going to use what we call blind nuts. And this is a blind nut. You basically drill a hole, put the blind nut through it, and then you squeeze this part together so it's stuck. And then you can actually use a bolt on the other side to connect to it. I'm going to use a M5. This is the size. Here is my little bolt. Then we'll go into it, and this is how I'm going to hold it. These are just the pliers that you need to use to bring in the blind nut into the metal panel. Before I took the fender off, I already marked a couple of holes on the fender, and these are these black spots, and these are already 2 holes that were in the right spot. And I will use those markers to drill a hole and then put the blind nut through it so I can bolt it down. That's one. All right, so let's see if we can get this done. Now let's unscrew it and see if this is tight enough, but it looks like it. Yep, and you can see this is very smooth here. We can now turn in that little bolt to hold the bottom part of the fender. Stick it through the hole and squeeze the pliers. Now you have to set the pliers properly for the right size. And that's it. I still have a couple more to do, and then we are all set. So I also created a small aluminum bar that will actually sit on top of the polyester, so the polyester fender is coming down and it will be caught behind this bar. The bolts, of course, will go through the aluminum and through the polyester fender, and that way we have a pretty strong and enforced connection between the frame of the car, or the bodywork, and the polyester fender. So the inner stone guard just needs a little bit of work, not a lot. You just need to straighten it up, and then we can trial fit it. And this is very soft aluminum, so it works very easily. So that should be almost good enough. Maybe bend it a little bit more. All right. So here's that panel, and we just need to lock it in place, but it looks like it's going to fit properly. I'm just going to put a few bolts in just to see how well it fits. Yep, that panel looks okay to me. I'm not going to bolt it all down, but it looks like the holes are matching up. So now let's start the other side. Got the fender finally in place, and it fits quite all right all along, except at the door here. And you can see the gap here versus there, and the door actually just hits it. There is not much I can do about this anymore, so I will cut off a little bit of this polyester fender, and then we'll have to fix it further. So I'm going to use this blue tape to mark where I need to cut. I don't want to cut too much off, but it should be enough so that my door is not hitting it anymore. I'm going to try with a small cutting disc to cut this edge off, and then we can clean it up later. So I think the gap is now sufficiently cut that the door can open without scraping it. But as you can see, we'll have to clean up that edge. But I can do that once the fender is off. All right, so all the bolts are loose. I should be able to take the fender off, and I can now clean up the edges when it's on the floor. So I'm going to leave it like this for now, and the rest we'll deal with once we are fixing up these fenders, because there's still a bit of work to be done on them. And the last bolt goes out, and I should be able to take off the fender. So there's a couple of areas we need to weld up, like this crack here. So I'm going to get rid of these stickers first. And a paint stripper is pretty good to warm it up a bit. All right. By mistake, I forgot to turn on the mic.
Nevertheless, this is now a voiceover, and as you can see, I created a round piece of metal that fits in the filler opening for the gas tank, and I'm holding it in place with 2 magnets. So now I'm going to tag it in place in a couple of points, and then I can remove the magnets. So here's my first tag, so the panel stays in place, and then I'm going to tag the second side. So I don't want to weld all the way from the beginning because that's going to deform the panel. So that's why I want to do little bit by little bit. It's now tagged in place, and I just need to hammer it a bit on the bottom and on the top so that it's flush with the other side. And now I can start by tagging it in all around. And I'm just trying to go always in steps, so never a continuous seam of welding. Because if you do so, you're going to deform the panel. So I'm just going around little spots at a time, and then I'm starting to fill in the blank spots while I'm going around. It is probably better to have a continuous seam, but if I do so, this is really going to distort the panel, and it's already distorted enough. I have grounded down the weld, and I know it's not very smooth in this area, but that's okay because I still have to put some polyester on top of it. And it's a bit recessed as well, so that will make it easier to put the putty up. I also welded up the little hole there that we used to pull the panel. And on the bottom we had a crack, and also I welded up that one. Again here, this is a bit recessed, and I will fill up this whole area now.
So now we're going to weld up all these little holes, and then the bigger holes that we have in certain areas, like this one, that one, and that one, I'm just going to use a metal plate in the back, and I'm just going to hold it against it, and then I'm just going to fill it up. So that way we should be fairly quickly finished with all these holes. So let's start. All right, so I'm going to start with that big hole in the bottom. So all the little holes are plugged up, so now I'm going to grind it down. Now for this kind of work, I like to use the sanding discs, and it's really grinding very well. I already have done one, as you can see. This was a big one. Now I'm going to do the smaller ones. I'm not going to touch it because it's probably very hot, but you can see how this is going to look like when I'm done. There's little edges still left, but that's okay because I still have to put the polyester up, so I think this will be all right. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to grind this off. I'm just going to continue a little bit longer now. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to grind this off. So I have a couple more to do, and then, so as you can see, this is fairly easy to grind off, and you get a pretty good smooth surface on it. I know I still have a few little edges here and there, but that's what I'm going to clean up now. So folks, we are at the end of this video, and it might look like we haven't done a lot, but this is the end of the day already. I've spent 10 hours making this video, and we only have trialed out the fenders, 3 of them, corrected them where we needed to, and now they fit properly. So I have them in the paint booth now, ready to be sanded down and repaired where needed, and then we're going to paint them, and you will see that in the next video. We also need to paint here and there the bodywork on this car, like this whole area right here, but now this is fairly smooth and ready to receive the polyester. I was planning to have it in this video, the polyester, but that's going to be for the next video because it's already 10 o'clock in the evening, so I still need to get dinner. So thank you for viewing, and please make your comments by all means. Thank you.